Hello everyone, and welcome to the Prepping for the Exam video. What we're going to do is just give you some strategies, some of them based in sort of writing strategies and things you can do to manage your answers, and some of them also based in concepts from the course and how to manage those. If you do those two things well, the exam should go well for you, right? So let's just review what we learned from the past, from the midterm. First, use meal paragraphing strategies. I know I've said it over and over in this class, and maybe you're tired of hearing it, but it's a simple and effective way in this online course where I don't get to work with you face to face and have a dialogue with you to make sure that you've got a really good roadmap for each paragraph. So stick to that. It's sort of a big open form, but it does give you a formula so you know what the expectations are. So please do that. When you did it on the midterm, things went really well. Right? And if you didn't do that, that's where I had a lot more to say and a lot more work to show you what was going well and what was not going quite as well in your answers on the midterm. So the other thing you want to do, I didn't jot it down here, is review your midterm feedback from me and anything else I might have said to you personally about your individual writing style, the successes, the strengths, and maybe some areas for change or improvement as well. Let's keep going from there. B, make sure that you read the questions closely for hints that I'm trying to give you on organization and analysis. So let's just look at the midterm real quick. Of course, the midterm worked with fall recovery, pastoral, ecological readings. We're working on sustainability now for the second module, but that won't matter much. The questions are going to be basically the same. There's no surprises. I want everyone to do well. So let's take a look at the midterm, and you'll see how we should read these questions, so that you can turn this into an easy strategy for success. This is the type of question you're going to see on the final exam. And it says, take one text of your choosing and interpret it through two different strategies. The different strategies are, and here they are listed down here. So you got to give a reading with two of those. Well, how do I do that? We'll take one of the strategies and use three criteria. Break that definition down into three things, right? If we want to take a look at what that looks like real quick, let me show you. Here's a nice example from a student. You can see this connection. They've set it up: Two-Hearted River, fall recovery. This connection is shown through three of Merchant's criteria, repeating the language back at me, but that means they're going to use it to actually analyze. And we see them: 1, 2, and 3. The idea is borrowed from fall and recovery in this case. And then we see those turned into paragraphs, right? First, and it's going to be this first one, the pristine past versus a disorderly present. And that's the big idea. That's all this paragraph has to talk about and show that in its evidence. And then we see the second one. And so that's exactly what you want to do, is that type of thing. It's very, very linear, very predictable. And what this does is lays a roadmap for the reader, but also big picture, it's a roadmap for you. So you know what every paragraph is supposed to do, right? And that's what I'm trying to signal you for in my exam questions. Another great example right here. This is the long answer where there's two different ways of interpreting and three criteria each. If you go back and look at it, and you can see the criteria for pastoralism, 1, 2, 3. They'll each turn into their own paragraph. We should see the words rural over urban over and over in one paragraph. Then everything having to do to prove anti-modernism in the next paragraph. And then softer, hard pastoral in the next paragraph, right? And then we should see, for what this question asked for, we should see that again for a different style of interpretation. In this case, the student did the fall narrative. And so we should see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3 here. And so there you go. And of course, they each turn into their own paragraph. And you throw on an intro and a conclusion, and ta-da, you've done a really great job. And I'm trying to signal to do this because I don't want this to be mysterious. I even say in the midterm, you might break it down into 6 body paragraphs, right? Because I knew 3 and 3. So I'm going to send you a lot of signals. I'm not going to give you a formula beyond that, but read those signals. And that's going to help you a bunch as you organize this. And keep in mind the criteria. Breaking big definitions or concepts down into manageable things you can use to analyze is what this course is all about. And that's really what I want you to do on the exam as well. And it's going to make your life easier because you know what you're analyzing for. Keep in mind, that is the goal for our course: offer more than one interpretation of a text, and for all these different things that we're learning, right? And that's a good skill for life. That's why I put it into the course. All right, let's move on from there. Summary versus interpretation. Some people just summarized. or their paragraphs opened up with just summary, you always want to get into your interpretation, and you want to do that fairly quick. You can think of this as sort of an English 111 or freshman English if you didn't have freshman English at WSU, just freshman English. Got to have a thesis. That's your opinion. It's an interpretation of the facts. It's argumentative. And you also need to explain your reasoning or your values, why or how you see it that way. Okay, so that's one thing that you want to be doing. Let's take a quick peek at an example. Now, the following example, we're going to look at this paragraph right here. And there's a lot of good stuff in this paragraph. But notice, if we're thinking of something that's mentioned later in my notes, a good strong topic sentence that gets me immediately into your argument or your interpretation, this paragraph is missing that. It happens slowly at the end. But if you take a moment and read this, and do pause the video and read this, it feels like just a bunch of summarized facts or incidents or episodes from the story. We don't know what these are evidence of. There is no claim at the beginning of the paragraph. And if we look at how it opens, there's a telltale sign. In the first paragraph of the story, Nick has dropped off. That's just summary, right? And so you need to, before you start giving us facts or episodes, you need to tell us what they're evidence of, right? Main idea, then evidence. We could say this starts with evidence, but without a claim in here, it's really just summary. Let's see, take a look and see if you can figure out where the claim is, what this is supposed to be evidence of. Looking at what all this is supposed to mean, it looks like the writer finally got to it down here. Nature will once again be powerful as it rises from the burnt ground. And that's the closest thing we have to a claim, and this is an idea from Merchant, so it's one of the criteria for the fall or recovery, right? So this is the type of thing that we should say first. And notice it leaves Nick out, so it should probably be like Nick is going to recover, because as a recovery narrative from Merchant points out, nature will rise again and be powerful. And that is, of course, the recovery narrative. You put that first in the paragraph, and now you have these quotes and these episodes, and they become your evidence. And after each bit of evidence, you explain how they are evidence, a sign of nature rising powerfully, and how that will help Nick recover as well. So you can see there's a lot of facts here, and it reads like summary because there's no claim up front, and there's no explanation of how all of these facts, these episodes from the story, correspond to nature becoming powerful again. So this paragraph needs to be flip-flopped, essentially, and all this stuff here, the claim, needs to go first, and then these nice facts can be filtered in after, and the writer needs to explain why or how these equate to Nick recovering as well. If you want an example of what a good analysis looks like, you could look at a lot of the stuff I did from Module 1 or Module 2, any of the videos, especially the poems and the essays. I'm taking you through an analysis, right? And so for sustainability, the Coca-Cola apology, where I look at it and say, what aspects of sustainability or the lack thereof, especially environmental racism, do we see in the Coca-Cola apology? Well, I went through paragraph by paragraph and pointed that out. You might remember I said in paragraph 2, I see this. In paragraph 3, I see this. That is an interpretation, right? It's using the ideas of sustainability to get beyond what the words say and show a deeper meaning in connection to sustainability, right? Of course, it is my opinion on everything, but that's what an argument is. That's what that's what interpretation is, an opinion. You could also look at my El Returno video as well, and that has a decent interpretation linked to sustainability. And so that's what we're shooting for here, right? I just looked at, I pointed out the importance of having a topic sentence. We had to flip-flop that one paragraph we looked at just a moment ago on Big Two-Hearted River. But have a topic sentence. How are different ways to think of a topic sentence? Place your criteria there. Again, if we look at that good example that I had on screen just a moment ago, it had the 3 criteria, and it started with each one. Of course, it's going to look something like this. On your exam, it should look something like this. The strong preference for rural over urban life. Here's the next one. Anti-modernism. Right, so we know these are pastoral, right? Softer, hard pastoralism. Notice the first sentence has that. That is exquisite. That's exactly what we're shooting for. And I hope I see the same in your exam. And more so, that's a good takeaway from this course to apply to the rest of your writing life. Here's how I think of topic sentences. Imagine that the first sentence has to tell your reader, which is me in this case, the major thing that I am going to learn when I read your paragraph. Don't give me just a bunch of stuff that happened in the reading, but what am I going to learn about your interpretation of the story? Tell me that in the very first sentence. See yourself as a teacher, and you'll never miss your topic sentences. Another strategy you can look for is that you provide the who, what, when, where, why, how. Nick enters nature after the war because, and the because will get you into the why and how, because he is seeking spiritual fulfillment, right? So you can see a who, what, when, where, why, how. Answering those questions in your topic sentence also gives you a deep picture of your interpretation. That after your quote or your example, you don't want to move on too quickly. Instead, you want to linger there and explain. Then here's how I always talk about it: why or how. That's your reasoning or the logic or the values. Why or how your example is what you say it is, right? That, struggling with the fish is Nick recovering in some way, or that struggling with the fish is anti-modernism, or whatever you want it to be. You can't just say that it's anti-modernism. You have to explain what it is. And that gets you into why or how. It's the why, how questions. And that's actually most of a paragraph. Let's take a look at a few examples. Many ways to write up this portion of a paragraph that comes right after your evidence. It's the major portion of your paragraph after the evidence. It's you. You're arguing, right? And so it's you doing this thinking, your reasoning, your values. But let's take a look here. It almost always has the word because or something like it, because that you're explaining how this thing that you found is actually evidence of your claim. So just take a look and read the second body paragraph here. Notice what I've done. Here's the end of my evidence. Based in the hunt and dead wings of the moth, this reaffirms the food web interdependence through color adaptation, because I could just stop here and move on to a second example. But no, I can't do that. I've got to explain myself. Because the spider is not only holding the prey, the poet has made all of these something like a list of observations. They're all the same. So this is my reasoning, right? This is my reasoning or values or what I'm seeing in the poem. If you don't give me this, you really can't get up into that A and B range of a great interpretation. You're telling me things are the same, or that this is evidence for a claim, but you're not explaining why or how. And this is a great way to think of your portion of the paragraph. After you signal what you're going to teach me, and you lined up your evidence, the things you're going to analyze or talk about, the meat of the paragraph is always this, and it's the why or the how, your reasoning, your values, your logic, right? And then you just kind of tie it all together and you're done. And so if you want to get up into the A and the B range, and if you had an answer that didn't go so well, maybe on the midterm exam, this is probably what happened. You didn't say anything here. An example that I really, really like that's loaded with good ideas, but doesn't really fulfill all of your obligations as a writer. Let's take a look at the middle here, a really great idea. The black sky represents the changing means of society, and her closing of the blinds in storm warnings is her way of removing herself from her surroundings. But then notice, well, why? Why is this representing that? We need to be told why it does that before you move on to the next idea. Right? And the other thing we might say about this, that I would say about this, is notice that if you look at the topic sentence, this is all about the struggle between city life and country life. We don't return to that idea. Another thing I'd like to teach you in paragraphing in general and in good answers in general, and certainly here this will be helpful. If this is a paragraph about city life and country life, we should see these words coming up over and over. And notice these words, even though they appear in the topic sentence, then disappear after that. All of these things, this could be explained more, the why and how, but also the why and how probably are going to connect it back to city life and country life, the major criterion for this question. So you can see why that there's a lot of good ideas here, but it kind of stalls out in the way that the answer is explained. And it really is just a lack of why and how, and a lack of tying it back to the big, big idea for the paragraph: city life versus country life. All right, so I've talked about most of these points in the examples. So one thing you can think of yourself as doing is identifying evidence patterns. I can talk a bit more about that in the next video, where I do a wrap-up of the water knife. But remember, you need to explain why and how. Don't move on from your evidence too quick, right? So you can take a look at what I've said here. Think of all of your answers as having to provide evidence and then the reasons that this thing is what you say it is, right? And another one that just came up in the last example, connecting your new information back to your old information, your criteria. In that example, it was city and country. So always coming back to your topic sentence. Thank you.